Hey everybody, this is Rykard here, and whether you know me or not, welcome to my first upload to the Pokemon Channel. Today's battle that I'm bringing you is an underused match against an opponent by the name of RoyalKnight95, who I met on the Smogon Wi-Fi Battle Finder. For those of you that are familiar with my channel, you have seen me use this team in the past, but for those of you that are unfamiliar with it, this team is very weird for me because I'm using two Stealth Rockers on it in the form of Nidoqueen and Bronzong, and also two Scarfers on it in the form of Frostlass and Rotom. Now, I know this is a common thing for a lot of other people to do, but is definitely something that I wanted to just experiment with and have definitely had a lot of success using. Along with those four Pokemon, I also brought a Curse Umbreon, which is one of my favorite sets for my favorite Pokemon, and also a Perish Trapping Azumarill, which is a set that I came up with that I've had a ton of fun using. As far as my opponent's team is concerned, pretty much everything on it is standard underused tier Pokemon, except for the Altaria and the Licky. Now, these two Pokemon are considered never used. However, a Specs Altaria is going to be powerful regardless of what tier you use it in because of how powerful Dragon moves can be. And also, Licky's walling capabilities are very good regardless of what tier you use it in, even though it does face some stiff competition with Pokemon like Clefable and other bulky normal type Pokemon. But with that, and without any further waiting, let's just jump into the battle right now. So to start things off, I decided to lead off with my Nidoqueen as my opponent led off with his Victini. Now, being a max physically defensive Nidoqueen, I know that I could live any hit from this Victini, including a super effective Zen Headbutt. So I decided to stay in first turn and just set up Stealth Rock so that they'll be there for the entirety of the battle. Now, seeing the damage that this Victini did with the Zen Headbutt, I can actually tell that it's a Scarfed one instead of a Banded one, but either way, it is locked into a move, so going out into my Umbreon is really good because it's going to be immune to the Psychic type move. However, now, seeing as I probably won't be able to set up this early in the battle, I decided to set up a Wish as my opponent brings in his Gligar. And now me expecting him to go for Earthquake on this turn, seeing as my Nidoqueen is the only thing on my team that has taken damage so far, I decided to go out on my Rotom to be immune to that as he sets up his own Stealth Rock, which was something that I was honestly not expecting. But either way, seeing as I'm a special attacker and Gligars are normally physically defensive, I thought I could possibly 2-hit KO with Overheat, but it looks like I'm not going to be able to, seeing as I'm -2 now, so I do have to switch out and go into my Azumarill. Now, normally Azumarill would threaten Gligar a lot because of 4 times super effective Ice Punch, but since I expected him to actually switch out here, I went for Perish Song. I don't actually have Ice Punch on this Azumarill, it's just something that a lot of Azumarills do. But he actually makes a really good play in going for Roost, seeing as that would actually make him only 2 times weak to Ice Punch, and it's not a stab attack, so he would have been able to take that really well regardless. But either way, I see that he's actually staying in. So I'm going to go for Whirlpool on the following turn, and it works out to my advantage right there because he does stay in, meaning that this Gligar is officially Perish Trapped, and it cannot do anything about it. So on the following turn, as our Perish counts are slowly lowering, decide to go for Protect to avoid any other damage from this Gligar, and then immediately on the following turn switch out into my Bronzong, because the only moves that normal Gligars pack to do any damage are Toxic and Earthquake, both of which Bronzong is immune to because of its Steel typing and also its Levitate ability. So I successfully was able to Perish Trap this Gligar, which is really good for me because that is a very threatening wall that I would have probably had to deal with for the whole battle if I wasn't able to do this. But as this Gligar goes down, I decide to bring in, or my opponent decides to bring in his Altaria, and now me expecting the Fire Blast because that's what Specs Altarias normally do for Steel types, I decided to go out into my Nidoqueen to just sacrifice it. But because I actually lived this, I'm like, well, I could actually probably still save this for later. So knowing that I do have a resistance to Fire-type moves in the form of my Rotom, I decided to go out into that. My opponent unfortunately misses, but it really wouldn't have done that much damage anyway. But actually, because his Gligar is gone, he no longer has anything on his team that is immune to electric moves. So I'm free to Volt Switch right here without any nervousness behind picking that move at all. So now I bring in my Scarf Frostlass, and because Frostlasses are not typically Scarfed, I believe I take my opponent by surprise right here, going for the Shadow Ball, which outspeeds his Scarf Victini. But now that he knows I'm Scarfed, he brings in his Licky, and since I'm locked in on Shadow Ball and Licky is immune to that, I do have to switch out and decide to go into my Bronzong to potentially get off a Toxic on it on the following turn. My opponent does set up a Wish though, but seeing as everything on his team is pretty much at high health right now, there's not really anything that'll get a huge advantage if he passes that off, so I'm pretty safe in just going for the Toxic regardless. I don't need to try and predict something and take it out in hopes that it doesn't get the Wish passed to it. But he does bring in his Mismagius here, and knowing that these things can be very threatening, I decided to go out into my Umbreon right away, knowing that Umbreon is pretty much a complete counter in every possible way to Mismagius. Even though it does have Nasty Plot and it is now currently a +2, a Hidden Power Fighting is not going to take down Umbreon. It is one of the most specially defensive Pokemon, and Hidden Power Fighting is obviously very unstab, only 7 base power as well. So I'm able to actually live that with about 100 HP and then KO the Mismagius on the following turn with a payback, which is really good because that could have been a very threatening Pokemon to have to deal with for the rest of the battle. But now this Altaria comes in, and rather than let my opponent predict correctly and go for the Fire Blast, expecting me to expect the Dragon move, I decide to actually use my Death Fodder now, go on Nidoqueen. Now knowing that he locked himself into Dragon Pulse, I can easily just go out into Bronzong, knowing that he has to switch. He does stay in though for this turn. I'm not exactly sure why, maybe expecting me to predict his switch, but either way, I just go for Toxic. It's not a problem for Altaria because Altaria obviously has the natural cure ability, but knowing that he is now going to switch out, I do go for the double Toxic, which is really good because I get a Toxic off on this Licky Licky. Now that's really great. Licky Lickies do often pack Heal Bell, but some of them don't. They can often pack Dragon Tail instead of Heal Bell in combination with like Seismic Toss, Wish, and Protect. I don't actually end up finding out what the 4th move on this Licky Licky set is, but either way, my opponent decides to set up a Wish as I go for Earthquake on this turn. And now because I went for Earthquake, my opponent actually might have expected that I would go for that again and go out into his Altaria to pass the Wish off to, but I kind of saw this coming and decided to go for Gyro Ball on the following turn to easily KO this Altaria from this range. Also, because I'm pretty much a minus speed nature with 0 speed IVs on this Bronzong, I knew that was going to do a bunch of damage to this Altaria. But he brings in his Raikou right here, and me having a super effective Earthquake, I decided to stay in. I knew it wasn't going to 2-hit, or I knew it was going to be a 2-hit KO, so I knew that this was not going to kill on this turn. But my opponent is actually able to 2-hit KO me with Thunderbolt, and rather risk anything else on my team taking that Thunderbolt, I decided to stay in and let my Bronzong die right there as I bring in my Umbreon to maybe take a Thunderbolt. I'm not really sure why I did this move. It just seemed like I could have potentially done it because I am a max specially defensive Umbreon. But either way, now the most obvious switch is to go out into my Scarf Frostlass. I'm going to outspeed Raikou even though I normally wouldn't, and my opponent is going to go for, or switch, in hopes of being able to take 2 Ice Beams from this Frostlass. But because of the Earthquake damage and the Poison damage and the Stealth Rock damage from before, he's actually going to be able to take 2 hits, but it wouldn't have mattered because he would have died, or he's going to die on this turn from Toxic. But he does get off a Thunder Wave on me, which scared me a lot because I wasn't sure how I was actually going to be able to take down this Raikou now, because it's at a pretty low range of health, and I know that my Frostlass has to die on this turn. But I am going to bring in my Rotom on the following turn, and I wasn't sure if Hidden Power Grass was going to KO it, because of Raikou just being a legendary Pokemon having naturally high stats. I could have went for Overheat, but I did not want to risk missing that because knowing my luck that would have happened, and luckily for me, the Hidden Power Grass actually does KO. However, if it didn't, I still had my Azumarill with Aqua Jet to finish the job at the end of the battle, giving me the victory. So thank you all for watching, and thank you PMP for allowing me to upload this battle to your YouTube channel. If you like what you saw, you can check out more of me at youtube.com/Rykard3, and the link will also be in the description for ease of access. Along with Pokemon battles, I do frequently upload various unique Pokemon moveset videos for a variety of different Pokemon, much like the Azumarill one you saw in today's battle, where I go into great depth on the various EVs, items, abilities, and moves that you can use on pretty uncommon sets that work extremely effectively in various tiers. So if that sounds like something you might be interested in, feel free to check that out along with my Pokemon battles at the end of this video. But that is pretty much it for this video, so as always, take care, goodbye, and I will see you all next time.